The boys' footprints stopped at the edge of the dusty road that cut past the chicken farm in Wineville. The summer heat hung low over the fields, and the wind carried the smell of feed and rusted wire. A neighbor who passed by later remembered seeing a boy standing outside the property, looking uncertain, as if he wasn't sure whether to turn back. That glimpse would stay with him for years, long after the truth about the farm surfaced and the name Wineville became permanently tied to fear. Before anyone knew what was happening there, the farm seemed unremarkable. It sat outside small rural communities east of Los Angeles, surrounded by orchards and scattered houses. In 1926, a man named Gordon Stewart Northcott moved onto the land with the help of his parents. His mother, Louise, was involved in his life in a way that made outsiders uncomfortable, though they couldn't have explained why. Neighbors noticed odd behavior. Young boys appeared on the property at strange hours. Some slept in the chicken coop or in makeshift shacks. No one understood why until much later, when it became clear that boys weren't staying there, they were disappearing there. The first alarm came quietly, through family and suspicion rather than police reports. Gordon often brought his young nephew, Sanford Clark, from Canada to the United States. Sanford was just a teenager, thin and soft-spoken, and neighbors rarely heard him speak above a whisper. What they didn't know was that Sanford was being held on the farm, beaten, threatened, and forced to help with tasks that became darker with time. Gordon told him that if he ever tried to run, he would be killed. The threat wasn't empty. Sanford knew what Gordon had already done. Inside the chicken coop, hidden behind rows of wire and stacked crates, Gordon kept boys isolated and terrified. He lured them to the farm by promising work or offering rides. Once inside, he abused them, then prevented any chance of escape. Some were bludgeoned. Others were shot. In several cases, Sanford saw Gordon force the boys to run before killing them, as if cruelty had to be drawn out and repeated. When Gordon was finished, he forced Sanford to help him dispose of what remained, often through burning or burial near the coop. Sanford lived in a constant state of fear, unable to protect himself or the boys who arrived after him. While these crimes were happening, another story unfolded hundreds of miles away. In Los Angeles, Christine Collins reported her 9-year-old son, Walter, missing in March 1928. Walter had vanished on a walk to the movies. Christine searched everywhere, put up notices, and begged the police for help. The Los Angeles Police Department, pressured by negative attention from recent corruption scandals, needed a win. Months later, they announced they had found Walter alive in Illinois. They brought the boy back by train, but when Christine saw him, she said immediately that the child was not her son. Officers insisted she was mistaken. They pressured her to try him out at home, telling her that trauma could change a boy's appearance. When she continued to object, she was arrested and placed in a psychiatric ward, labeled as delusional for refusing to accept the child. It was only when evidence from Wineville surfaced that the truth about Walter's disappearance began to make sense, and Christine was finally released. That evidence came from Sanford. In 1928, his sister Jessie traveled from Canada to the United States to check on him. She sensed something was wrong from his letters, which had grown strained and strange. When she arrived at the farm, she saw Sanford was terrified. In private, he told her what had been happening. Jessie went straight to the American consul, and authorities moved quickly. Gordon fled as soon as he realized the police were coming. Deputies arrived to find the chicken coops empty and Sanford distraught, finally able to speak freely. Sanford described what he had witnessed in painful detail. He spoke of multiple boys brought to the farm, including a boy named Lewis who had been killed and buried near the orchard. He described how Gordon taunted victims, how he kept souvenirs, and how he forced Sanford to help destroy evidence. Investigators found bones, clothing, and small personal items that matched the accounts of vanished boys. They located fragments on the property that showed children had died there, even though full bodies were never recovered. The remains were scattered, burned, and mixed with chicken feed and soil. Gordon was eventually captured in Canada after a brief escape attempt. He fought extradition, claiming innocence, then changed his story repeatedly. His mother, Louise, confessed to killing one of the boys, 12-year-old Walter Collins. But her confession was inconsistent and shaped to protect her son from the full weight of the charges. Investigators believed that Gordon was responsible for Walter's death, but without a body, they relied heavily on Sanford's testimony and the physical evidence collected at the farm. In court, the proceedings were grim. Sanford testified about the killings of 3 boys officials could directly link to the farm: Walter Collins, Louis Winslow, and Nelson Winslow. The Winslow brothers had vanished months earlier while riding bicycles. Their family, like Christine Collins, had searched desperately, unaware that their trail led straight to the same coop. Sanford described how the brothers were held, how they cried for their parents, and how Gordon killed them when he decided they were no longer useful to him. The testimony was so disturbing that some jurors struggled to remain composed. Gordon showed no remorse. He smiled in court, whispered to his lawyers, and treated the proceedings as a performance. Reporters noted how he seemed to enjoy the attention. He alternated between denying everything and bragging to deputies that he had killed far more boys than authorities knew. The truth may never be fully recoverable, given the way he destroyed evidence. The jury took little time to convict him. Gordon was sentenced to death and hanged at San Quentin in 1930. In his final days, he refused to give families the closure they begged for. When asked directly if he killed Walter Collins, he denied it, then contradicted himself moments later. He walked to the gallows shaking so badly he had to be supported. Even then, he refused a final confession, leaving questions open that should have been settled. In the aftermath, the city of Wineville tried to sever ties with the horror now attached to its name. In 1930, residents voted to change the town's name to Mira Loma to escape the association. But the crimes were too infamous to disappear. They remained among the most disturbing in California history, acts committed not in some distant wilderness, but in a quiet community where people assumed nothing that evil could take root. Sanford Clark, still a child during the years he lived on the farm, was not charged with murder. Authorities recognized he had been trapped, beaten, and threatened into silence. He eventually built a quiet life, though the memories followed him. For families of the missing boys, answers came slowly, and for some, never completely. The chicken coop stood until investigators tore it apart, looking for anything that could be used to identify remains. The case showed how easily a predator could hide in plain sight, how authority could dismiss a grieving mother, and how a small farm in a rural corner of California concealed crimes that haunted the state long after the hangman's rope ended Gordon Northcott's life. Thank you for listening to Homicide Files. Subscribe for more true crime stories.